that your thoughts create your emotions. People never hurt our feelings, and it's very empowering. And not to take yourself or your life too seriously, because
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Tamara here all the way from Switzerland. Tamara, thank you for joining me on Time We Discuss.
thank you so much, Dan, for having me. I think we're going to have some fun here.
We definitely are, based on our pre-recording conversation. This is going to be a hoot. So, Tamara, we're just going to jump right in. You're a confidence coach. What exactly is that, and what's your typical day like? What do you do?
That's a great question. So actually, I'm a confidence coach because, we never learn confidence at school. So I think that somebody has to fill in that position. So I discovered that this is what I was missing for, I think it impacts every area of your life. So I just decided, actually, it's something that I used to really need help with. I got coached a lot. And I said, okay, now it's my time to spread the love and help people with their confidence. So this is how I started. And for your second question, my typical day is waking up full of self-doubt because I have a primitive brain. One part of my brain is very primitive, like everybody, but that is just 85% of what we think on a daily basis is negative. So my brain is like on repeat every morning, but I'm coaching myself through feeling more confident. And yeah, just in big lines, like I'm in the morning taking time for myself. I love reading with my coffee. Then I start coaching and making sure that I work not too much, but just efficiently, to help people, but I take a lot of time off also.
That's fantastic. A nice balance between work and play, so to speak.
Exactly. And I play during my work because I think that we can also have it all. So yeah. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. So how did you actually get started with this? I know you said, confidence was an issue for you. And I think most people, I said on an earlier episode, actually several times at this point, I wish I had the confidence now 20 years ago. I think I'd be that much further ahead. But how did you actually get started doing this? What led you down this road?
So I used to be a teacher, for kids, and I love them. They are so not simple, but authentic, they don't really play games. They are just themselves. I think we were all born confident and somehow we lost it a little bit, judging ourselves, seeking validation and approval from other people in the world. So I started I was a teacher, but I felt also this was missing from the curriculum, all the how to improve a relationship, how to have your own back when you make decisions. It sounds honestly the obvious thing that will truly help us in our life, today. So I started learning life coaching more, and I graduated. I did one certification in 2015, and then I started coaching people on, productivity, time management, weight loss. Dating was also a big one, and it was a funny one also. And then I saw that it very often, always, I think it comes down to what we believe about ourselves, what we give ourselves permission to believe, no matter what area of our life or no matter what I coach people on. Very often it comes to feeling worthy, feeling good enough, So I said, this is basically fit the basis, and then people can just thrive, from feeling really confident and having your own back. I said, I think this is my what my intuition tells me. And then I added the fun in front of for the tagline, fun and confidence coach. And I really honestly help people getting excited. And I saw you speak fast, so I'm okay, I'm just gonna get into this. But I help, people having a live with a light-hearted attitude towards life, not taking things and ourselves too seriously. Still, you have dreams, you have goals, you want to do things, but relax, taking it easy. And anyway, we're all gonna die, so in a nutshell.
I love your whole demeanor, your whole attitude. I love that because I view myself as being a very lighthearted person. I love to be silly. I love to have fun. And it sounds like you're right there too. I love that. I absolutely love that.
I agree. But I'm also serious, on the thought that. But I think people think it's a black and white, but you can be seriously not serious.
So let's talk about your transition. I'm assuming you're not a teacher anymore, or are you still a teacher?
No, I'm not. But I still have my diploma. I always like to say I used to be a teacher, but I'm no, I'm still a teacher, but I'm just not, I'm just not practicing.
So what was that transition like, going from being a teacher in a formal setting to doing what you do now? How did you leave the one to go to the other?
So I'm going to tell you something, an answer that you probably did not expect. I remember teaching at school, and my back then boyfriend, so now my husband, called me one time when I was going out of school, and he told me, we are going to sell online. And I was thinking, what am I going to sell? My ballerinas, my shoes I did not wear for a bit of time, on eBay, I don't know. And then we actually started selling on Amazon, FBA, our own kitchen gadgets product kitchen gadget line, which is kind of funny because we both don't like to cook. And so we started this business, was working very well. So I stopped teaching at this point while learning life coaching on the side, but I had a big self-imposter syndrome, thinking that I was 24, 26 then back then. I was like, can never coach people. Like I'm too young, which I can see was already a belief that we always have excuses, it's just our brain. And then I stopped teaching and we went full on this business that we sold. And then I said, I'm just going to coach people because I started to coach in these different areas. And then I said, no, my intuition, which is something that I love also to help people with, to tap into our intuition. I said, no, my intuition is telling me to now go into coaching, confidence coaching. And so this is how I transition. And then you can see I learned education, teaching, and then I sold this business really like for well, like we sold it like for a good price, and now I'm like having this successful business. So I think you got already some answers to your question.
So before you talked about, the nagging thoughts that we have as individuals and even things like imposter syndrome, stuff like that. So when helping people navigate this negativity, I know other people talk about using, maybe NLP or hypnotism, like putting people in a trance-like state. And that may be a bit of an exaggeration, or maybe I'm not using those words quite correctly. But do you employ any of those tactics in what you do as a confidence coach?
Yes, so actually these are amazing techniques. I think it's something that I love in the life coaching industry, that it's an unregulated industry. So you basically can do whatever you want, which has the downside of people, telling you when you meet, like, I'm also a life coach. People come to me for advice. And I'm like, yeah, why not? The more the merrier, as they said. So to answer your question, what I use a lot from another coaching certification that I did in the US this time, a few years ago, is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which says in the big line, states that, you're familiar with it, that your thoughts create your reality. So if you want to have a look at, like, if you want to change something in your life, or change something, you just it's very simple. You just have to look at what you're thinking on a daily basis, because your thoughts create generate emotions that drive your actions and then create your results. So everything in the world can be basically put into this, I call it the self-coaching model. And then this is how you change things, but it's very, instead of, kind of, not a bandage, how do you call the little things you put when you hurt yourself? Like, instead of putting this, we go down to the cause, the source of the problem. And I like just to give the example, it's just, more talking to people, for somebody who wants to lose weight, for example, it does not matter how many diets they try, like the action line, no matter what they're doing, if they still have the same thought as to, like, this is going to be very tasty to snack. This is something I'm struggling with, And so it does not matter the diet if you still have this thought. So what we are going to do in my coaching is really like first finding out what is the thought that is creating the result we don't want. And then like trying to not swap thoughts, but like, people spend so much time shopping for clothes. I believe that we should spend as much time or even more like shopping for better thoughts. I think the quality of our life depends on the quality of the thoughts we think every day. So in a nutshell, again.
I've only been really exposed to life coaches, in the past several months as I started doing this. I knew they existed, didn't really know what they were. And it seemed to be the case. There might be a little bit of stigma here, at least in the US, about like, life coach, really? Like that kind of reaction when someone mentions life coach. Where you are in Europe, does that stigma exist at all? Or are people a little more, oh yeah, of course, a life coach, whatever. What's that like?
No, I will tell you, in the US, it's already much more, you guys are in advance. I find myself being a pioneer in Europe because people are, or they don't know at all, or if they know a little bit, it's exactly what, like you said, that people are very skeptical. And most of the time, like, yeah, they just don't know about it, which I like to explain that it's just, somebody that helps you to, like a cheerleader, somebody that helps you reach goals, or like when you feel stuck. So I think I'm just, at first, when, people have this reaction, it's just, no matter what we are thinking, it's a reflection, like what we judge others to think, it's often what we think about ourselves, So there is something about life coaching that is really new, like compared to, for example, and I'm not comparing to therapy or psychology, like, I mean, they go to study it like a bit seriously, but it's funny how people, when they feel bad, they rely right away, they think of going to see like a psy or like therapist, when you think that, I believe in a few years, it's not for the same, like we don't, it's not exactly, we don't do the same, but it's funny how it's automatically like people, it's okay to go see like a therapist. And I think in the future, it will be like life coaching will be that much like professional athletes, they get a coach to just not be better because we are good enough as where we are, but to, yeah, improve ourselves and everything. So I think today we live in my opinion, we live in the best time ever to be coach on our life. You know, like I can't believe it exists. So I'm glad to do this. But when people start talking about, like with me, I have no problem to explain what I think, but I never have to convince. You know, I believe that I don't need to. But good question. But in Europe, so to say, you are better in the US for this.
It's interesting you make that comparison to like a therapist, for instance. And I think back, when I was younger, you heard about different people, in therapy, and I'm using air quotes for anyone that's just listening, and there was like that same kind of a stigma attached, like, oh, they're in therapy. And I feel like that has now gone away. It's like an okay thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And I can see what you're saying,
Yeah.
give it more time to get through our culture. And it's like, oh yeah, they're using a life coach for this or for that or whatever. Interesting
Yeah.
point. Okay. So let's go back to when you got your first paying client. How did that first person approach you? How did they discover you, or how did you discover them?
Yes, it's a good question. So I think it happened. The first one was only like was 5 years ago when I just started sharing that I was a life coach, embodying a little bit being a life coach, but I still was like selling my garlic press, online. So I think when you're less attached, like you have high intention but low attachment, like I really knew that I could help people, but I was like, yeah, and I'm a life coach also on the side. And then people just came to me actually by this is why I wanted to say, for people that think of changing career or anything, it's also important to like have an intention. We're gonna probably talk about this, but I mean to know a little bit what you like a vision maybe or something that you would want, which can make people feel stuck just at this point. But like to really be high intention, knowing that you can help people, and then like kind of letting people come to you by just being like who you are from your profession. I mean, I'm not sure that a lawyer and a doctor is going out the way that I'm a life coach is, but I'm trying to be a billboard for coaching. Like I want to be in integrity with my work. So this is how I think people started asking me like, how do you feel good like this? And I got coached a lot. I did not feel good like this at the start, but I think this is to answer a question just by showing up in the world and taking one step. And I believe the universe takes 1,000, for you.
I completely agree with that.
I agree.
Yes, I do. I do. What are some of the common things that people come to you for? Is it as simple as, I need more confidence, or is it more like I want to apply for this job and I don't feel I'm good enough, or I just got this promotion, I feel like, I pulled one over on them, the imposter syndrome. When people come to you typically, are there any trends that you see with the type of people that come to you?
I feel like the word that come often is like they feel stuck, that they really tried everything on their own, listening to all the podcasts, like reading all the personal development books that is out there and just not knowing how to move that needle, but knowing that something has to change. So but yeah, and they are not very often they are not used to invest in coaching or like confidence because it's not a tangible results. You don't know that you're going to get this spaghetti dish after the end of the 8 sessions or 4 sessions. So I think it's just fascinating from a place of selling and marketing. It's something that and also probably this, but like as an entrepreneur, it's the best personal development journey you can make, because it's reflecting all of your money belief, marketing belief, selling belief, self-worth, like thinking that they buy you and not your coaching. So to answer a question, it's well, I hope I answered your question
That
in a
works.
certain way.
So you mentioned in certain circumstances you might have like a 4 weeks of session or 8 weeks. And I recognize it's going to be different with everyone, but what's like a typical range? Is it typical that you start with 4 weeks and then you branch out to 8, or you start at 8 and then like, oh, actually after 4 you're good? Like what's kind of typical if someone's working with you?
Actually, usually it's really 8 weeks, like 8 sessions. And sometimes when people are really invested after already 4 sessions, I teach the pillars. We go through some tools that you can then use yourself to self-coach yourself. And so usually it's 4 weeks and then or we do the 4 weeks next to each other because it's nice also to be able to implement it in your life. And then, you have celebration, mistake, because again, the primitive part of your brain will like offer you the same thoughts that you've been seeking until today because your brain's job isn't to make you happy. Your brain's job is to keep you alive. So it's just going to tell you you're not good enough because it thinks that you're going to get eaten by a lion. So usually this is how we do. It's 4 weeks intensive, but it's fun. because I decide we can also make it fun, even the work, as they say. And then usually it's off 4 weeks, so like 1 week out of 2, and there are clients that we work together for 6 months, for 1 year, but usually it's around 3 to 4 months. But I offer really like 8 sessions or 4 sessions just to get the brain on board, and then we go from there. And people that say, yeah, I also love to give advice, but we never give advice because we just don't know what's best for the person. So we always ask questions, and I help, people to build this trust in themselves, because I just don't want, it's not a quick fix, I want to give them a permanent solution so they can coach themselves for the rest of their life. So yeah, this is in a nutshell. We do like 4 weeks, 8 weeks. It's already good, intense, and fun for sure.
And you said sometimes, you might work with them a little bit longer. It could be as much as like maybe 6 months or a year. What about people coming back for like, I like to say like a tune-up? Maybe they're with you for the first 8 weeks, and then you don't hear from them from a year. Like everything's good and grand. And then do they ever come back at that point after like you haven't heard from them in a long time? And it's like, oh, by the way, I could really use your help again. What's that like?
Look, I think that I'm too good, so people just don't come. And I'm kidding. No, I think it happened once. No, because after 6 months, for example, what I think is also super interesting, and I love it, is I usually give also lots of resources and other podcasts. So I guess people are continuing their work with somebody else. I think it's also so important. The people love, maybe they buy my energy, and they want also this positive attitude. But that being said, there maybe there are so many life coaches, so maybe people continue somewhere else. So I guess it's just because my techniques, again, you mentioned NLP, which is also amazing. I think people like, when they start to do this work, they want to know more ways to add to their toolbox, to be able to handle anything that life throws at them. So to answer your question, maybe 1 or 2 people, but usually they get unstuck fast, they feel more confident, and then it is, something that to face adversity every day, like I'm not saying that life is going to be hard, but there are always challenges. So I guess that then they have all the tools to face them. I want to believe this. And if not, they're always welcome,
That's so true.
Good marketing here. No, but also I'm going in the direction, I'm learning American Sign Language to be able to coach people that are hard of hearing or deaf people. So it has nothing to do with what I just talked about, but I wanted to say that then, no, it has nothing to talk to, but I wanted to say, I was thinking about my audience, like, so, sorry about that.
That's okay. I'll tag on to that a little bit. So, back in, oh geez,
good luck.
I think it was April. Oh no, it was Cinco de Mayo. The episode came out on Cinco de Mayo. I spoke with Jared about, he was an educator for the School of the Deaf, and he also was an American Sign Language interpreter. So when you started talking about sign language, it immediately made me think of that episode. So if you might find some interest in that, other people might find interest in that as well. So it came out on May 5th of this year.
Oh, thank you, because I listened to a few, but this one I did not, so I have to go back to. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going back to your education, how important has that translated into what you do now? I know we touched on that a little bit, but do you think having that teacher background really helped you in your current role, or not so much?
Good question. I think that I want today to choose to believe that it did, because I cannot go back. I never feel regret, which actually regret is an emotion. I think we can also feel it and be fine. It's like any other emotion, but people don't want to feel it, It's more what we make it mean, that we should have made a different choice. That being said, I'm going to be completely transparent. I was so bored at school, which I'm not sure if it has something to do. It was already 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So like the teachers, bless their hearts, they were so cute. The kids were so cute, but I was so bored, and I did not learn about authority, how to have authority with kids. I was just having fun. So I think I was way too nice back then. So to tell you the truth, I think, and this is also how I help also my clients, to look at the past, to make peace with the past, to the past outside of trauma. Again, I'm not formed for this, complete transparency, but I agree with the fact that the past only exists in the thoughts that we have about it. So I'm not sure I would have done these studies again, because I was a bit bored and I liked things, I like to move and all of the things. But that being said, I'm choosing today to think that it was a good move back then, and my parents were pushing a bit, but they meant well. And I think it took me still to where I am today. And yeah, so to answer your question, I'm happy. But if we would have talked like 12 years ago, 15, I'm not sure I would have said the same answer. I'm not sure if it's a good answer for you. I apologize.
No, that's perfect. I love that. I love the transparency, because I really want to try to identify things that people could, skills they could need to make them successful, or abandon things that wouldn't make them successful, and just try to really identify those things or knock down barriers, things like that.
Yeah, but I think it's sorry, I just want to say this. I think it's take the best and leave the rest situation where you can have it all. You can decide that what you've learned until today is serving you, like that you can take, again, the best and forget the rest from what you learn. And then also, maybe it's going to go with your next question, but to also know that you have enough to move today, that you can do whatever you want. You're going to talk to me maybe about this, like people that want to change career, to also believe. Very often we want also, depending, for doctors, it's maybe a bit different, but we want, to learn more. But I think it's still an excuse a little bit because it's less risky than putting ourselves out there, So the idea of like, I take the best and leave the rest from my past, and I'm good enough today to do like whatever I want, whatever my vision is like, we can really have it all, I believe.
I love that perspective. I love that. So let's stick with education for a second. Either formal or informal things that you've learned, or that you are still trying to learn, anything that would be benefit to someone trying to pursue this career. It could be learning more about human psychology or marketing or something like that. Any of those skills that you've acquired or that you want to acquire that'll help you out.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, even if you're into coaching, or, there are lots of also life coaches that don't have any certification, which I'm still happy. Like, for example, one of the main things that I learned was to hold space, which means that you don't judge the other person. You have no idea what they should supposed to do, and you just look at their brain objectively, and you show them the difference between facts, like circumstances that are very neutral, and their thoughts about it. So what I'm trying to say by this is that this was very helpful to learn. But that being said, I know lots of people that don't have certification and are very helpful, that help people. And I tend to agree that people, most of the time, not that they don't care about certification, but they just want to make sure you can help them. So as long as you have the tools, there are people, honestly, that have certification, don't do anything about it. So it's not black and white. But to answer your question, I think one direction for me was the cognitive behavioral therapy. I think it's very, very interesting. And when it comes to marketing business, we can think of people like follow or have a look without falling into the comparison trap, but looking at people that do the same and what, maybe again, back to what they're thinking, like what are they believing to be true to be able to feel confident, take this action, and then create this result, like a successful career for themselves. And also, and I'm going to throw all the business coach outside of from the window, but I believe that we should tap much more into our intuition and think. I also always go with my first guess is my best answer, and I just do something, Then you can always learn from people. I really still believe, I get coached a lot, but I think we should really trust ourselves more and just try, and worst case, we try something else, But very often we borrow somebody's idea, so then it's not only our fault, but I just follow what they did, it's not, I think it's just fun to do it this way. But
Tamara, I said this before, I'm saying it again. I love your perspective. It's so interesting and authentic. I love it. And it's good practical advice too. It's great stuff.
Actually, I would love to hear your answers to all of your questions, but I think I just have to listen to your podcast now for this. But you always interview people, so
I'll have to do that. I'll have to try to find the best of, and then I'll do
and the question you ask, maybe write one time, and then you answer to the best question. I would love that.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that. So this is actually the part of the show where I like to ask the person I'm speaking with a surprise question. Has absolutely nothing to do with what you do for a living. And every once in a while, I will answer this myself. Today, I'm not going to.
Why? I'm afraid now.
I don't have anything prepared. I can't think of it. I'd have to really put some thought into this. I get that luxury. You do not.
Yeah, I was going to say what, but I did not get anything in the email about this. Okay,
so
I'm ready.
Tamara, your surprise question. With every year that goes by, your birthday tends to become a little less special. So, my birthday becomes a little less special to me. Growing up and even going into our young adult lives, we have different years which we deem as milestones. It could be when you turn 16, 18, 21, 30, etc. Some of these birthdays could have been amazing, a surprise birthday party or a destination birthday. And then others may have been, a little lonely or maybe even forgotten. So let's stay positive. Look at your past, and which of your birthdays was your favorite and what made it that way?
first question, you're gonna expect this also. I think that every day is my birthday. So annoying, people that said that. But I believe honestly that I feel excited every day. Also, I don't exchange gifts, so I really don't care about this. And I don't want people that never talk to me to send me a message just on this day. I'm kidding. I'm not entirely kidding. So I would say the year of my 30, because I'm 34 now, and I turned 34 years ago, and I was in Mexico with my husband. And I just remember that we're in an all-inclusive. We were working on this business, so we can work from everywhere, which again, I think we truly can have it all, but prefer not tell anybody, like all of the people about it, because I still want people to live in a place and serve me when I'm eating in a restaurant. But you really can have it all. So we were in Mexico working, but also traveling at the same time. And it was, I think if I think I had many nice birthdays, but this was one to remember.
I love that. I love that. Nice. And it sounds like it's a great memory. Mexico, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And you cannot thank for one birthday.
I'll have to,
Totally.
so let's see. My 16th birthday, I got tickets to see an ice hockey game, and that was the first time and only time I got to see a live ice hockey game. And at the time, so I'm outside of Philadelphia, and it was the Philadelphia Flyers were playing. They were home, obviously, and they were playing the Vancouver Canucks. And at the time, I also really liked the Vancouver Canucks, so it was really cool. I got to see like both these teams that I really liked play against each other.
Sounds like a nice memory.
Yeah, it was really good. So I think I'm going to have to go with that off the cuff. I think that's the one when I turned 16.
Awesome. I'm happy I knew it, and you found it in the end.
Yeah, I just had to think about it just for a couple seconds. So, Tamara, one other thing before I cut you loose, I do like to give the person I'm speaking with the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, their business. So if there's something special you'd like to discuss, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. No, this was even more surprising than the other one. Like, what's what I'm going to say? No, I think just to tell people a cause that sounds like less maybe a charity than what other people would say. I would just say, don't believe your brain. Really, like we all have 60,000 thoughts per day, and we think it's the reality, but it's like wearing glasses. If you take off the glasses, you can see things completely differently. This is why two people are in like one birthday party and they have completely different thoughts about it. So the first step, 50% of personal development, selling my stuff now like this, is just don't believe your brain. I think this is I wish you would just learn this at school, like that your thoughts create your emotions. People never hurt our feelings, and it's very empowering. And not to take yourself or your life too seriously, because we probably don't get out alive. So this is not my quote, Yeah, I think this is a cause that is important.
I love that. I love that. And like that, one of those ideas of not taking yourself too seriously, that's resonated with me for over 20 years now. So
really?
It has. My brother was a big proponent of that and kind of ingrained it in my head. So
that's nice. I'm always telling my husband, because very often he's like serious, and you can usually, if you don't think about the future or the past, like everything is fine in the exact moment, but sometimes it's very like serious, and I'm like, make sure you don't have fun, because it's like, just take it easy, even if I'm telling myself often when I'm like this, but it's just easy to give advice to other people, so I'm glad it resonates with you.
Yes, absolutely. Tamara, it's been awesome speaking with you all the way from Switzerland. Thank you for being on Time We Discussed, and we learned about what it's like to be a confidence coach.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan.